It's so good being able to be in God's house and to worship God. Greetings from ChurchAlive West. Since I've been here 3 weeks ago, a lot has happened. Remember when we started the plant, you thought, okay, we're going to have a church, it's going to be there. But there's a lot going on. And each week when Pastor Jay comes, he always says something has changed, something's new. And just to let you know that this week they started working on the renovations of the children's section and new bathrooms. Isn't that wonderful? Because they're going to get a better venue there as well. And a lot of that is also thanks to you. Thanks for what you're giving. And as Pastor Debbie was saying, in your giving. So thank you for doing that. It just makes such a difference. Because you see, the end of the day is God is the owner of everything. We fool ourselves to sometimes think that we control these things. God controls it. He gives us everything and He supplies our needs. And we need to remember that. And He will supply our needs. The second thing is I told you we had air conditioning. And I just want to show you a picture so that you can actually see. Our air conditioning is up and going and it's actually working. Whereas, yes, if you can see, we're officially as cool as you guys. So thank you. We're very happy with that. What I did notice of this photo is because, the Bible says we must let our light shine. I realized how much the light shines off my head. I realized that. So I'm so grateful that I brushed my hair today. On a serious note, another first for us was last week. I know you had baby dedications here. We had our first babies and children being dedicated last week. We were so grateful. Grateful to God for that. You see, Jesus said He'll build His church and the gates of hell will not prevail. So we're excited when we do. Are you excited for today? I'm really expectant. I'm excited. As I've been praying in the week, I just pray that God will help you to understand that He's the provider of everything. And in your obedience, He will provide. I want to just encourage you with that. We started a series. If you haven't seen them, you can go and look on our YouTube channel. We're in the middle of a series. This is the third part of the series, The Other Side. Pastor Jay kicked us off 2 weeks ago. And that series is the concept that we are living on earth. We're here on earth. We're having an experience on earth. If you haven't realized that by now, there's something wrong. But we're having this experience on earth. But there's the other side. There's a spiritual side to our lives as well. And there's a spiritual kingdom as well. And to understand, actually, we are spirit beings having a physical experience on earth. Because we are spirit beings. And when we pass away, we're going to continue to live. And that's not just whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian. I was talking to my grade 6s, and they were saying, "Sir, guess what? We are Christians, and when we die, we're going to live forever." And I said, "But what about people who aren't Christians or aren't Christians yet?" They said, "No." Their understanding was one of that they are not going to carry on living. I said, "No, we're all going to carry on living because we all are spirit beings. The difference will be our destination at the end of the day." And we just had a really good conversation with that. So I was excited to talk with them on that. Today, the topic is the other side, obedience. We're going to be looking at obedience, and we're going to be looking at what that means. You can't be a Christian if we don't submit our lives to God, and there's an obedience to that. In fact, if your life is characterized by non-obedience, I don't think there's such a word, but if there is no submission in you to anything, it's going to be a lonely road. It's going to be a tough road because we need to yield to some things, even on our streets. That's why there's a yield sign. It's because we need to yield to it so that it's our benefit at the end of the day. I just want to do something with you quickly. Please take this hand for me. And if you're comfortable, I want you to just go up like this. And then I want you to take the other hand and go up like this. I'm watching some of the single guys. You're taking people's hands next to you. That's not good. Okay? Take this hand again, please. Go up like this. Then you can put it down. Take your other hand, go up like this. Stick with me on that. There's a point to it. Let that be. We're going to get to that. You ready? You excited? Obedience. When I say that word, what comes to mind? What image comes to mind for you when I say obedience? You've got a picture of it. I'm sure you didn't see the word. I'm sure you had a picture because we think in pictures. Do you see this? Do you see this when you think of obedience? That girl is not going to listen to that mom if you look there. And all the moms are like, "Yeah, I've seen this many times." Okay, obedience, sometimes we think it's forced, it has to be this, and that child might just be saying, I will obey just to keep you quiet. I've taught long enough that I dealt once with a situation of, I think it was 5 or 6 grade 9 girls. I said to the teacher, I'll handle it. We handled it. They all agreed. We left. I said, what's your problem? Look, we solved the situation. And that lady teacher said to me, they've just kept you quiet. I said, you don't know anything. The next day, same girls are there, same situation. You see, sometimes that's what we see, obedience. Did any of you, when I said obedience, the picture, any of you see this? It brings a totally different image, doesn't it? A totally different thoughts and emotions. You see, because Jesus obeyed what his dad asked him to do. Jesus' life was simple. He said, I come to do what my Father has sent me to do. Not my will, but his will be done. Remember in the Garden of Gethsemane when he begged, please, don't let me do this, but your will be done. So I want to encourage you today. God will never ask you to do something that he hasn't already done. And even in that, he allowed his son to do. You ready? You excited? If you've got your Bibles, you can turn with me to Genesis 22, or you can go on the app. It's all there to go through it. But before we do that, if you take the word obedience, did you notice that the word die is in the middle of the word obedience? I was reading this over the last couple of weeks, and suddenly that just stood out to me. And I thought, how ironic that the word die is in the middle of the word obedience. That tells us that something in us needs to die if we are going to obey. Something in you has to be surrendered in order to obey. If you were in the military and you were given an order, you can't defy that order. You have to follow that order. And if you look here, sometimes in order to obey, we have to surrender something. Normally it's our will, our choices, or even our rights. We have to surrender something. And when it comes to following God, obviously there's a surrender. When you became a Christian, you also surrendered control of your life over to God. But there's exciting. I really pray for encouragement for some of you, especially if you're going through a hard time, to understand that in the midst of your obedience, God will provide for you. God will look after you. Not because I say so, because of who he is, and that's his nature, and he promises to do that. I want to ask you a few questions by means of an introduction. What or who are your most prized possessions? What are those things that, people just can't touch? Maybe it's your car. Maybe it's your children. Maybe it's your spouse. Maybe it's your phone. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your reputation. Something that is just so valued to you in your prized possession. What would you do to keep it? What would you do to keep it? If you're telling me your health, well then obviously you look after yourself. I look at teenagers, don't touch that phone. That thing is prized because it's not a phone, it's a connection. It's a communication device. It allows you to be part of somebody's world. What would you do to trade those things that were important to you? What would you give up for them? Because that also reveals where your heart is. We're going to look at a story today, as Pastor Debbie said, in the Old Testament of Abraham and Isaac. And it's a story of obedience, it's a story of trust, and it's a story of God's provision, which we are always so grateful for. Because you see, it's God who provides for us. You might work hard, and you put your talents and your giftings to use. But God gave you the ability to do those in the first place. And I want us to journey for that. Just before we jump straight into Abraham, Andy Stanley said this: there is something insincere about a man or a woman who repeatedly tells God how much he or she loves him while refusing to obey him. Something insincere about saying, I love you, God, but I don't do what you ask me to do. And we need to be people who, when God asks us to do things, we do it. You with me? May I share a quick story on my journey of obedience? I was working at a school. I'd been there for 13, 14 years, and I really felt God said to me, I need to leave. And if you know me at all, I am not a person who would just randomly leave. I like to think through things. I like to be organized. I don't just like to spur of the moment do things. And here was the challenge. I felt God said I must leave. I said, okay, God, I just need to find another job. And I really felt he was saying, no, you need to leave, as in go. So I spoke with my wife. We prayed about it. I also spoke with people who knew us, wise counsel. And I spoke with my boss as well and said, this is the situation. I'm glad he didn't say, oh, you can go today. That he was actually like, wanted me to stay and that. And I just said, this is not about here. There's no issues. But because I was in a leadership position, we needed to give it time. So it didn't look like there was a problem, because if somebody leaves, you say they're going on to this area and this job. But if you're just saying they're just leaving and there's no reason, it looks bad at times that there could be. And there were no issues about that. So I eventually left, and it was an obedience step. And just a side note, I'm not promoting here, leave your job, have nothing, and off you're going. Okay, this is so not me, and when you get to know me, you'll realize this for me was really a faith step and an obedience step. And then I left, and it was supposed to be 3-4 months in exploring different options, and it turned out to be a lot longer. But there were reasons for this, and there was trust. But at the same time as trusting, it was tough, and it was difficult. It was hard. And we're going to go and look at Abraham's story now, and then I'll relate the story back. So pin the story for now, and I will pick it up a bit later. You ready? Genesis 22, verses 1 to 18. And I'm going to read through it so that we all are familiar with the story. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. Abraham, God called. Yes, he replied, here I am. Notice God called and Abraham answered. That tells you how close their relationship is. I wonder if God called us today, would we even know it was God? Are we listening? It's a good lesson in that. Yes, he replied, here I am. Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. You notice how intimate God is with Abraham? Take your son, your only son, and then he names him, yes, Isaac. Speaks of their relationship. And I just want to share also to say, God would never ask you to do something he hasn't already done or not prepared to do. There's a direct link here to Jesus dying on the cross. Do you see that? He gave his son, his only son, for us. So when you think, whoa, this is really harsh for him to ask Abraham this, God in the future was already going to do this and actually go through with it. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you. The next morning he got up early. He saddled his donkey and took two of his servants with him, along with his son Isaac. Then he chopped wood for a fire for a burnt offering and set out for the place God had told him about. On the third day of their journey, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Stay here with the donkey, Abraham told the servants. The boy and I will travel a little farther. We will worship there, and then we will come back. Notice what he said to his servants. He didn't say, I will come back. He said, we will come back. How's that faith? I think in the middle of the night, I would have packed my car, I would have taken my girls in the opposite direction, because I would have gone, I can't do this. But Abraham knew who God was. He knew God would provide. So Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carried the fire and the knife. And the two of them walked on together. Isaac turned to Abraham and said, Father. Yes, my son, Abraham replied. We have the fire and the wood, the boy said, but where's the sheep for the burnt offering? God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son, Abraham answered. And they walked on together. Notice Isaac accepted the answer. It speaks of their close relationship and that he trusted his dad. I just imagine those 3 days, what's going on in Abraham as he's traveling, thinking, what's going on? But that's our human side of us and us being fathers. When they arrived at the place, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. He then tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Yes, Abraham replied, here I am. Notice he's still in tune with God. He's still hearing God. He hasn't got angry and said, God, I can't believe you're doing this. He's still listening to God. Don't lay a hand on the boy, the angel said. Do not hurt him in any way. For now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son. Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham named the place Yahweh Yireh, which means the Lord will provide, or we know it as Jehovah Jireh, the Lord is my provider. To this day, people still use the name of the name as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. Notice one man's obedience became multi-generational, just praising and honoring God and saying, this is where God will provide. Then the angel of the Lord called again to Abraham from heaven. This is what the Lord says, because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your son, your only son, I swear by my own name that I will certainly bless you. I will multiply your descendants beyond number, like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies, and through your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me. Isn't that an amazing story? I know there's many parents in the room. I couldn't, if God told me to do that, I'd be like, I can't. I'm sure you probably feel the same, even though I can't speak for you. But there was something about Abraham's relationship with God that he knew he could trust God and for God's provision. Notice, and this is where the hand comes in. This is us climbing the mountain. This was Abraham and Isaac climbing the mountain. In obedience, they were climbing the mountain to the place that God told them to go. Do you see that? This is Abraham and Isaac climbing the mountain. God said to a specific place they must go. Right? And they were able to go. On the other side of obedience, there was a ram moving up. There was a ram moving up before the place of provision. You notice the difference? We need to do on our side, the obedience side. We need to leave the other side to God. C.S. Lewis says this, obedience is the key that opens every door. Obedience is the key. God's blessings are multi-generational. Abraham's only son Isaac was asked to be sacrificed, yet he, Abraham, became known as the father of the nations. Do you see the irony in that? He had to give up his own son, yet he was told he was going to be the father of the nations. See, God is true to his promises. He's true to his word, and he will never give up on you. There are things we can do on our side of the mountain, on our journey of obedience. Abraham did that. Did you notice that Abraham had to chop the wood? He chopped the wood, and then he gave that to Isaac to carry, but he had to carry the fire and the knife. So I want to ask you, in your situation as you're obedient and you're climbing the mountain, what does chopping the wood look like for you in your situation? Because we have to do things on our side. Remember, God will sort out the other side, but we need to do things on our side of the mountain. We've all got talents, gifts, and abilities, and we need to use those in the current situation that we find ourselves in, because it's God who provides on the other side. Are there any hikers in the house? Those who love hiking, a couple. Any rock climbers? People who climb rocks? I'm not talking about you drove your car to the top of Northcliffe Hill. Those who climb rock. I've got a couple of friends who they do rock climbing. They're quite crazy. They just love it, and wherever you are, they're climbing on things. That's why I threw them out of my house, but never mind. But those of you who love hiking or those who rock climbing, you love it. You love the challenge, but you also love it when you get to the top and you see those amazing views. And when you get to the top, you sometimes forget how difficult it was to get there. But you need to keep going to get to the top, to experience those views. And whatever situation you find yourself in, as you're climbing out of obedience, just like Abraham and Isaac, they climbed out of obedience. You need to know that God is with you and God is going to provide on the other side. And that's not your problem on the other side. God will sort that out. It's hard work. Remember that. It really is. So if you find yourself on a mountain, please turn to your neighbor and say, don't get strung out on the mountain. Good. I want us to get a little bit practical. Now we've got the backstory of Abraham and Isaac. I want to give you 3 conflicting ways in which we climb the mountain. There's 3 points to this. Point number 1 is unconditional obedience versus personal preference. Unconditional obedience versus personal preference. Going back to verse 1. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. Abraham, God called. Yes, he replied, here I am. Take your son, your only son. Yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you. Can I just stop there for a moment? To all the young people here, if your parents nowadays put some wood down, tie you up, put you on the wood, phone 10111. All right? Right now, this is not the place to be. Okay? So don't allow for that. This was in the context of what God was doing here. The next morning, Abraham got up early. He saddled his donkey and took his 2 servants with him, along with his son Isaac. Then they chopped the wood for the fire for a burnt offering and set out for the place God told him about. It's so important to realize God had told him there was a place, there was a destination. Just like for you, God tells you this is where we're going. And we need to go there. We need to set it in. My personal preference dictates this. I will follow if there's an advantage for me. Right now. Instant gratification. See, that's what that dictates. Unconditional obedience says this. I will obey straight away because I trust the shepherd. Abraham heard God, listened and did what God asked. He had unquestionable obedience. See, we need to realize that the shepherd is trustworthy and we can trust him without a doubt. If you go back to my story, here's my obedience, trusting God, unquestionable obedience. And it was hard. It was difficult. You know, it was difficult when people phoned me and said, how have things worked out? Say, no, we're still climbing. We're still chopping wood. We're still doing this. I'm doing the obedience side of this mountain. But it's difficult when people phone you 2 months later, have you found a job yet? You start questioning things. But don't allow doubt to creep in when God has told you to do something. He is faithful, and there's a reason he told you to do it as well. Imagine Abraham had run the other way. He wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame of Faith. He would not be. We wouldn't see it on that side. Number 2, God's provision versus my self-sufficiency. God's provision versus my self-sufficiency. On the 3rd day of the journey, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Stay here with the donkey, Abraham told the servants. The boy and I will travel a little farther. We will worship there, and then we will come right back. I love his faith. Then we will come right back. Okay. I would have been tempted to say, we're coming back, and I would have gone down the other side of the mountain. But thank goodness I'm not Abraham. So Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders. He himself carried the fire and the knife. Notice Isaac had to do some work as well. It wasn't just Abraham. As the 2 of them walked on, Isaac turned to Abraham and said, Father, yes, my son, Abraham replied. We have the fire and the wood, the boy said. But where is the sheep for the burnt offering? God will provide the sheep for the burnt offering, my son. Abraham answered, and they both worked on together. Parents in the room, don't you think you would be tempted to give a different answer there? You know, sometimes your children come and ask you those questions, and it's so difficult to answer. You give them an answer, but your body language tells them a different story. I love how Isaac just accepted his dad's answer because he trusted him. And I pray it can be a generation of parents as well, where our kids trust us with the answers that we give. When they arrived to the place where God had told him to go, they built the altar and arranged the wood of it. Then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Yes," Abraham replied, "here I am." "Don't lay a hand on the boy," the angel said. "Do not hurt him in any way. For now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld me, even your son, your only son." Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. So they took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in the place of his son. And Abraham named the place Yahweh Yireh. Isn't that amazing? I sometimes think, how did that ram get there? Abraham didn't have Checker 6060 to deliver it for him. But you see, Abraham didn't organize that. God organized it. God had the provision on the other side. Abraham just had to do his part on his side. Abraham told his servants that they were going up the mountain to worship. So we learn there is a relationship between worship and obedience. There's a relationship between worship and obedience. The more we worship, the easier it is to obey. Why? Because we become more Christ-like. We become more like Jesus. God's word is clear. We can't earn our salvation. It only comes by grace, not your effort. But as a child of God, we can bring pleasure to our Heavenly Father through our obedience. An act of obedience is also an act of worship, and we must remember that. My self-sufficiency says, I need no one. I am a self-made man or woman. I am the captain of my ship. There isn't anything on the other side of the mountain anyway. I haven't even thought about the other side of the mountain because you're so focused on this side. Relying on God's provision means trusting less in your abilities, your talents and gifts, and trusting more on the one who gave them to you. Trusting more on him. Abraham trusted God wholeheartedly, even with the life of his cherished only son. He didn't rely on his feelings or emotions. He trusted God over his feelings and emotions. Can you imagine if Abraham made the decisions based on his feelings, as any parent would? We would be like, we can't do this. And we mustn't make those decisions based on our feelings. We must make them based on who God says and trusting his promises. Coming back to my story, you see, in this 3-4 months, ended up being 15 months. And you see, it does something to you. Especially when a lot of people say, are you sure you heard properly? And I even questioned that. But never doubt what God has told you. Long story short, my chopping of the wood was looking for jobs. It was I spoke at a couple of camps. I spoke a couple of different situations. I served on a few boards. I would tell people my story as well. And in there were connections with people. And eventually, what happens is there were opportunities that came up, and I was able to find another opportunity somewhere else, and then I was able to get a job there and carry on. But there's a spin-off to this. That wasn't the main thing. It wasn't about finding another job. It was about listening to God and saying, God, I know this is obedience step. And here's the biggest thing that I got out of this, my wife and I. My priorities, my level of priorities, as in my scale of what was important to me, had work at about 90%, family probably at 10%. You cannot go through life like that. This helped me realign them. I got my priorities right. I got work in the right box, if I could say, of where your priorities should be. My family became more important, and it helped me realign that, which I didn't even know that was going to be something. And that was a blessing. But you see, that also came from God's provision. You see, here was the obedience side of the mountain. Here was the provision side of the mountain. I had to do the obedience side. God provided on the other side. I'm a driven person, so I still find myself caught sometimes. I love work. I love working hard. But I found the balance. And thank God, because my family was at stake at the end of the day. So that was something where God had provided. Number 3, sacrifice versus self-preservation. The angel of the Lord called again to Abraham from heaven. This is what the Lord says. Because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your son, your only son, I swear by my own name that I will certainly bless you. I will multiply your descendants beyond number, like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Self-preservation demands. Self-fulfillment is the goal. I'm not my brother or sister's keeper. I am the center of the universe, and I'll put my needs ahead of everyone or anything. That's what self-preservation does. On the other side, the sacrificial path says, no matter what the cost, I will put your will ahead of everyone and everything. God honors obedience. Through sacrificial obedience, we find the pathway to joy. And again, if I go back to my story, sacrificial path in obedience. God was the provider on the other side. God is the provider. We don't have to worry about that. He's the provider. But we have to do our side in the obedience. I loved what Ilan said last week. Weren't you blessed by Ilan's message last week as well? Just the other side, and Jesus and the disciples in the boat. And they went to the other side. Two things stood out for me. One, his point of he would rather have Jesus in the boat sleeping than standing from a distance watching. And know that we have a God who's with us in it, no matter what's going on. And the second point that I took out from it, which I loved, if Jesus is sleeping in the midst of your tough time, follow his example. If he's at peace, you can be at peace. Because if he was stressed, then we can be stressed. But he wasn't. He was at peace. And I see it within Abraham and Isaac. Abraham was not worried because he knew God would provide. Charles Spurgeon says this: obedience to the will of God is the pathway to perpetual honor and everlasting joy. Happiness is fleeting. It changes based on your circumstance. Joy, a deep-seated knowing everything's okay. Why? Because the God of this universe loves you, is with you, and will look after you. We need to do what we must on our side of the mountain. We need to obey. We must be obedient and climb. Focus on our side of the mountain and let God sort out the provision on the other side. Do you get it? That's why I asked you to do that in the beginning. This is Abraham and Isaac climbing through obedience. And on the other side, a ram was going up that mountain at the exact right time. Where God chose it, it was provided for them. Whatever situation you find yourself, same with my story, you're obedient and you're climbing, it's hard, it's tough. At the exact right time, God is providing on the other side when you go to the place he asked you to go. Our faith needs to rise up with that. Andy Stanley says this: stepping outside of your comfort zone is not careless irresponsibility, but a necessary act of obedience. You stepped out of your comfort zone when you became a Christian. It was a necessary act of obedience, and you were invited into the best journey that you've ever had. A tough journey. Sometimes the children at school think, sir, I'm coming to Jesus and everything will be all right. It is right with your soul, with your spirit, you're right. But we still face tough times. But we must remember, this is a short period. This is a short period of life. We're going to live for a long time. And the God who provided, as Abraham and Isaac were obedient, he provided on the other side of the mountain, will provide for you as well. So what are our next steps as we finish? I don't know where you find yourself. I don't know what mountains you're climbing. I don't know out of obedience what you're climbing, but I want to encourage you. Just like God provided for Abraham and Isaac, he'll provide for you. Because that's what he says he will do. Where is our faith today in the context of the other side of the mountain? What is occupying your hearts? What are you allowing in there? What is he asking us to let go of and trust him more for? What are our next steps in obeying God on our side of the mountain? Why don't you close your eyes with me as we pray? Lord Jesus, Father God, thank you. Thank you that no matter what mountains we climb through your obedience, you provide on the other side of the mountain. And no matter what mountain people are climbing today, maybe it's a mountain of finance, mountain of health, mountain of just trust, Lord. Remind people that you provide for our needs and you're providing it on the other side. God, help us to obey you. Give us strength to know that even though we don't see it, your provision is on the other side of the mountain. Help us to keep climbing. Help us to trust you as we climb. Heal us where we need healing from hurt. Comfort those of us who need comfort. Give us courage to keep walking and climbing till we see your provision and glory. And while every eye is closed and every head is bowed, maybe you don't even know this God who we've been talking about. Maybe you're going, I don't know this, I want to know more. Well, the Bible is very clear. It says, if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus Christ is Lord, then you will enter his kingdom and you will be saved. So if there's anybody here today who your next step is, you take the first step of getting to know him so that you can know his provision. Please won't you pray this with me? And church, I'm going to ask you if you can pray it aloud with me as well, just because we're not here to make anybody feel uncomfortable or anybody to feel embarrassed. But won't you pray it with me? Because the Bible also says that the angels in heaven celebrate when one person becomes a Christian and gives their life to God, because it's God who's providing for them. Please pray this with me, church. Lord Jesus, thank you for dying on the cross for me. I acknowledge I am a sinner and in need of your forgiveness. Forgive me, please. Wash me clean and come and take your rightful place in my life as Lord and Savior. Amen.